Morning guys, welcome back to the channel. This video is all about kingfishers, so how to find kingfishers, how to photograph kingfishers, and a few facts about kingfishers as well. And I think they're probably one of my favourite UK birds. I mean, they're quite small, weighing up to about 40 grams, but they really punch above their weight. That lovely blue plumage, that iridescent plumage, the lovely orange breast, I think they look fantastic, especially on a fairly dull winter's day. Now, in order to photograph a kingfisher, we need to find one first, and that's all about location. Now, as the name suggests, kingfishers like to eat fish. That's their main source of prey, mainly sticklebacks and stuff like that. So they favour slow moving rivers that are quite shallow, streams, shallow ponds, nearby streams. So in order to photograph the kingfishers, if you find the location that they're going to be hunting in, that's the first step. Now, they hold a territory, so they live in the UK all year round, and depending on the availability of fish, will depend on how big the territory is they need to hold. So the minimum is around about 1 kilometre, and then it ranges up to 3 or 4 kilometres. So once you find an area where a kingfisher is holding that territory, you know there's going to be a good chance of photographing a kingfisher. And then it's a case of finding ideal perching spots. So as you walk along the riverbank, there'll be overhanging branches and stuff like that, and that's where the kingfisher likes to sit on, looking down into the water, ready for those to sort of dive onto those fish. So the key thing is find a stretch of river that's got a kingfisher on, and then find those perching spots. And then it's a case of either using some camo or setting up a hide and waiting for the kingfisher to come into that perch. And another good little tip as well is kingfishers will always search for new perches. So if you find a area of river that you know a kingfisher's using, if you put a new perch into that riverbank, so just put it into the side of the river, if you can do it safely that is, then almost certainly the kingfisher will check it out. And if it's good for fishing, he'll come back, and if it's not, he won't come back. But the fact of the matter is, if you're ready and you have to be there at the same time pretty much as you put the perch in. So put the perch in, set up your hide and get ready, because they'll check it out often quite quickly. So that will be the starting point for finding the kingfishers. Then the next thing we need to talk about will be camera settings. As you can see from this clip, the kingfisher, once it's caught the fish, it hits that fish against its perch a number of times to stun it and eventually kill it. And then it'll throw it up into the air and reposition the fish so it's head first, which means it will slide down its throat a lot easier, and there won't be the fins of the fish pointing in the wrong direction to get caught in the bird's throat. And as I think I've mentioned, it's a very small bird, weighs only about 40 kilograms. The wingspan is only 25 centimetres, and it's only about 15 to 17 centimetres long. But even though it's a small bird, like many small birds, it needs to eat a lot to maintain its body weight. And a kingfisher roughly eats its own body weight in fish every day. So they're supreme fishermen, and they really have to be out there looking for fish for a good period of time. That's why once you find the perch, it does give you a very good opportunity to get some great kingfisher pictures. They're quite short-lived as well. They only live around about 2 years. So once you've found a kingfisher territory, doesn't mean it's going to be there for years to come, because they're quite short-lived birds. When it comes to actually photographing the kingfishers, you need a fairly long focal length because they're small birds, as I say. I mean, we're talking about that big. So I normally use my 600mm prime lens, but I do sometimes use the 200 to 500. So I'd say anything sort of 500mm plus, and you're in the sort of right sort of ballpark for focal lengths. And then it's a case of, if it's a kingfisher perching, we need around about a 500th of a second to avoid camera shake and any little bit of movement. If you're trying to capture that kingfisher in flight, taking off or diving or stuff like that, then you're going to need a 2,000th of a second minimum. So it's very dependent obviously on light conditions, whether you can get a fast enough shutter speed for the action shots. So if the light is really dull, then start off with the pictures of the birds perching, because you only need a 500th of a second to do that. And then if you want to get the flying shots, obviously you're going to need to increase your shutter speed, but that will also involve increasing the ISO number. And when it comes to ISO, high ISO performance is good on digital cameras now, so on mirrorless or DSLRs, which means we can push our ISO higher than we used to be able to. So even on a dull day, you can still get flight shots of kingfishers. So I would set a 2,000th of a second, as I say, minimum, to avoid any subject movement because they move quickly, and then set auto ISO, so the camera will automatically push the ISO up to maintain that shutter speed that you've set. Now, as I say, the higher the ISO number, the more digital noise we get, which can spoil the image, but with cameras being really good at high ISO performance now, and lots of great post-production software such as Topaz to take away the noise, it's not such a big deal. So I think even on dull conditions, getting a fast enough shutter speed to freeze the action is fine. So we need a long focal length, we need to be either in a hide or camoed up, we need to have a fast shutter speed for the flight shots, and at least a 500th of a second for the static shots. And then you focus on the kingfisher's eye. So either use a single AF point, or if you've got bird eye detect, use bird eye detect. Or if the background's not too messy, I sometimes use a group of AF points if I'm looking for a flight shot, because it's easier to get a group on the bird rather than one single autofocus point. But the only trouble is, if the background's quite messy, lots of branches and you know, little flowers and stuff sticking out, sometimes the autofocus can get fooled if you're using too many group points, and it can start to focus on the background. So my advice is, if it's a messy background, use a single AF point. Unless you've got bird eye detect, then use that. Kingfishers will perch on all sorts of branches, from really thick ones to quite thin spindly ones, and they're just looking for a perch above a slow moving shallow body of water, looking for fish. So they'll perch there, they'll be looking down into the water using really good eyesight, and then they'll pounce on that fish as it comes past. So when it comes to opportunities for photographing kingfishers in flight, you've got the opportunity where they're diving down into the water, although they are incredibly quick, or also they may well fly off down the river to another perch if there's more fish in a different area. So there's lots of opportunities if you can find a kingfisher perch to get some great images. And not only do they use the river to fish and hunt along, but they also nest in the riverbanks, and they'll build or they'll dig a burrow into the riverbank above the waterline, and it's quite deep. It's about 60 to 90 centimetres long, about 6 centimetres wide, about slightly wider than the kingfisher itself, and then they'll put a slight dip in the bottom of the burrow so that the eggs don't roll out into the river, and they'll probably lay 2 or 3 clutches a year, and in each clutch it's around about 6 or 7 eggs. So that's quite a lot of kingfisher chicks throughout the season, and the adults have to work incredibly hard with the chicks because the chicks eat a lot. Each chick will probably eat 12 to 18 fish a day, and if you've got 6 or 7 chicks, that's a lot of fish. And they hatch after about 19 to 21 days, the chicks, and they'll leave the nest about 24 or 25 days after they've hatched out, so 24 or 25 days old. So it's a really busy time for the kingfishers. If you do find a kingfisher nest though, you have to be incredibly careful, and I think you do need a licence in this country, in the UK, to photograph kingfishers by the nest. So my advice would be, find a perch away from the nest, and during breeding season there's going to be a lot of activity up and down the river because the kingfishers are going to be super busy gathering lots of fish up for their chicks. I hope you've enjoyed this video, guys, and if you have enjoyed it and you haven't already subscribed to my channel, if you can consider subscribing, that would be brilliant. And if you have liked this video, if you give it a thumbs up, a like, that would be great. It always helps. And it's free to subscribe, by the way. So and if you do subscribe, if you press the little bell icon, you hopefully will be notified when my next video is uploaded. So yeah, as I say, hope you've enjoyed this. And if you've got any sort of experiences of photographing kingfishers yourself, so you know, great kingfisher shots you've got, great experiences, great encounters, if you drop them in the comments section below, that'd be brilliant. So thanks for watching, and I'll speak to you on my next video. Bye for now, guys.